Rick, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm super excited to talk to you about Combat FC 9. This is Combat FC 9, right?
It is.
All right.
It is.
I actually wanted to start off talking about Combat FC 8 and specifically the Carlos Lazoya fight. It was who was the gentleman who was fighting Pitch
Picciano.
Pashao, yeah. Oh my
Picciano.
god.
That
What
was
a
a
fight.
fun fight. Yeah. Yeah, that was probably, I mean, it's probably the best fight we've ever had.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, I mean, I've mentioned one that we had many years ago where the two guys were just slugging away at each other, and it was um and that was one of the better fights that I've ever seen. But that one was like, the one from way back was kind of sloppy, and they were just like, they just brawled, and you could see that they were both exhausted. It was, the hardest 3.5 minutes of their life, right? But
Yeah.
the Lazoya Picciano fight, I mean, that was some real high level MMA. And you know, it looked like Lazoya was going to get him out of there early in the fight, right? It
Yeah,
looked
he
like,
almost had him in, I think, a rear naked choke at the end of the first, right?
yeah, but I'm just talking even with the punches. Like, it looked
Yeah.
like in the second round he had him hurt bad. Um, like his corner was telling him, like, to go out there and finish him. Like, you got him hurt bad. Like, go out there and finish this guy. I mean, so they were calling for that early because it looked like he had him hurt real bad. And but if the last 30 seconds of the fight, Picciano drops Lazoya, like, he's
Yeah.
going flying knees in the fifth round. Like, I mean, there's no quit in that kid, right? So that was one of those fights that um kind of sucks to come in second place, but it was, I mean, incredible fight from both guys. That was awesome. And I thought we had both guys back, but Picciano's opponent pulled out, so
Oh.
we weren't able to get him on this one. Um, that was a challenging piece for me, right? Is I had so many guys who were considering the Picciano fight, but then they came back and then they said, "Oh, well, I mean, he's a guy that fought for the belt last time, and I'm probably not, like guys that we were trying to get, not an easy fight, right? Because there's no such thing as an easy fight, and it's not like we were trying to get him something super easy, but we were trying to get him something that wasn't Lazoya, right? Like, we were trying to get him something that was, a slight step down in competition, and nobody was biting. Uh,
I don't blame him.
Right. They go back and watch that fight. I mean, I had some people that were like, yeah, yeah, let me take a look, let me watch some tape on him. And then they came back and they were like, nah, I don't like that on 3 weeks. I don't like that on 4 weeks, like it was always maybe on a full camp. Um, I mean, that's the tough part about being tough as shit in this game.
What a dog that dude was. I mean, he didn't win the fight,
Yeah.
obviously, but just so much heart. Just
Yeah.
kind of like you said, he dropped him right at the end of the fight. Even in the third round, he had some really good moments. Fourth round, he had some
Yeah.
moments. Just a crazy fight. Such a crazy fight.
Yeah, that's the only time. I mean, we've had guys leave early, right? Like, we've had guys, whether they leave in an ambulance or they just leave because they want to go out with their buddies. There's always, like, I'll have the checks on me and I try to pay everybody that night, but there's always three or four guys that I don't meet up with, right? They're not there as I'm handing them out. That's the first time I've ever driven to go meet a guy to give him his paycheck the next day,
Yeah,
right? Like, he was still in town, and I was like, yeah, after a fight like that, I'm not gonna, like, normally I just mail them out and I'm sure they get them pretty quick, but I'm like, you know, I'll be right there. Like, the hotel's probably 30 minutes from me, and I was like, I'm on my way. I'll drive down and hand it to you.
yeah.
And
Where is he from?
he's from New York. I'm not
He's in New York. Guy?
where in New York. I want to say he's Long Island, or like in the general vicinity of Long Island. Um, so yeah, I actually drove down and met him, and yeah, he looked like he got in a car accident. Like, his eye was pretty swollen, his lip was big, but I mean, like, he looked. I mean, you could see the damage on his face, but we were like, again, it's a weird thing to say because, of course, you wouldn't expect him to be like all concussed the next day, but like, we were just hanging out and bullshitting like normal, and he's just got a swollen face.
Just banged up. Yeah, I mean, Carlos Lazoya, he was just jabbing him all night, right? Like he had so many, which is I wasn't really expecting that. Just because he seemed like the smaller fighter. It seemed like
Yeah.
he was going to maybe have to use a little bit more grappling or more ground and pound, but he was standing, he was throwing, and he was finding a way in with that jab. It was a really crazy game plan that just worked.
Yeah, yeah, I don't think the other team was expecting that at all, because Carlos hasn't really shown a ton of boxing. Like he's shown enough boxing, like everybody in MMA can fight a little bit, right? Like everyone can
Yeah,
has some boxing, but he's never shown plus boxing, like he's never shown, above average boxing. And, he went out there in that fight and I mean he turned it into a dogfight. And, it was amazing to watch. I mean, it's such a good fight and it capped off. It didn't even, there was still another fight after that, so I can't say it
yeah,
capped it off, but just the whole night kind of built to that, like we had so many good fights on that one. I'm not going to be able to recall them all off the top of my head, but actually, you know what? I have something here that I probably can. I've got my little cheat sheet on my other monitor
oh
here.
yeah, nice.
I mean, yeah, we had, yeah. So Marin's fight was fun, right? James Marin. I know he's
Yeah,
another,
my boy. Yeah,
yeah, another comedian like yourself. So yeah, Marin looked great. Josh Medeiros looked great, beating Sean Johnson. Lucas Rosa picked up a fast win. Like Chris Peralt. So that was the crazy thing. Like there were a few fights in there. I don't have the fight order in front of me, but like we found a tooth on the mat. Like I found like because that the poor kid that was cleaning up all the blood after that fight, like
yeah.
it's just a kid with a
Oh,
rag,
no.
right? So like
Yeah, it
goes
was
into the
bloody. That was a
cage,
bloody night, man.
right? But the whole cage was covered, and he walks in
Yeah.
and he's like where do I start? Like
Oh,
you even see at the start of the main event, right? Like when Jan and Chris Foster are entering the cage, the kid's still down there, like wiping up blood, and he started wiping up blood like the second that fight was over. Like I mean, he was in there for a solid 20 minutes just cleaning up and we, there was a tooth. And I was like, so I actually walked up to Picciano after the fact. And I was just like, I was like, hey, there's a, like I assumed it was his, right? Because he took a lot of the punches in the fight. And I was like, hey, I don't like I'm not a dentist. I don't know if it like I don't know if you want it. Like I don't know if they like can put it back in. I have no idea, man.
yeah.
But
I don't know.
if you need it, it's over there. And then he starts like, kind of trying to figure out if it's his, and he opens his mouth up and he's looking at his coaches and he's like, no, I don't think it's mine. He's like, all my teeth are good. He's like, none of them are loose. I'm good. And then I was like, oh shit, it must be Carlos, right? I walked over to Carlos and I'm like, hey man, there's a tooth over there. I checked with him and then Carlos is doing the same thing, right? And he's opening his mouth, having his coaches look at it, but like
Yeah.
both of them there's just blood all over there. Like, their mouths are covered in blood, so they're like swishing water around and like, look, is it mine? And then they're both like, no, I don't think it's mine either, man. And I'm like, okay, I guess we got a tooth that we don't really know whose it is. Um, and we found out the following day, someone had reached out to us for the medical claim form saying, hey, so and so lost a couple teeth in his fight. So like the tooth was from like, a fight or two before, and like somehow nobody noticed that there was and it looked like it was a crown more like or just a cap or something. It wasn't like a full
Full tooth.
tooth with like roots or anything, but it was the size of like a girl's press-on nail, like
Oh yeah.
things you buy at like CVS, but it's just like, I'm like, what the hell is that doing there? So that was the kind of night it was, where like we had a tooth on the canvas and had no idea whose it was until the
Just
following day
tooth
because
flying around.
dude, it was bananas. Like those amateur fights were crazy. Like
Yeah.
all three amateur title fights were great fights. Um, and it was the type of night where, if you get like, on a night of 12 fights, if you get two or three bangers, like that's a great night. Like if you get two or three that are just like, wow, that was just chaos and had you on the edge of your seat the whole time. But I mean, we had I mean that Noah Sklama and Femi Marquez fight was great. Um, you know, Cordigiano and Smith was great. The female fight, Kat Torres and Paige Wilcox. And then the three amateur title fights, just, it was just back to back to back, just chaos. And then you got into that Lazoya Picciano fight. And I mean that's one of those fights that like it's hard to compare another fight to it. Like I would be shocked if we had any fight on this next one that's as crazy of a fight as that. Like that's like I don't want to say once in a lifetime, but I mean that's like a once in a
Yeah.
very long time type fight. We don't usually see him that crazy. And then, Jan had the big knockout in the main event.
That was a perfect way to, and I mean, not for the dude he knocked out, obviously,
Yeah.
but like for the emotional roller coaster that you went on the fight before, it was like you needed just someone to be like, okay, you know what? Every I understand everybody has had a crazy like 25 minutes. Let me just give you a quick little one,
Yeah,
two,
let's
and
get the hell out of here.
let's get
Like,
out of
yeah,
here.
yeah, exactly. It was like everybody was like, and you could see it. Like at that point, it was just, the arena was still buzzing, but it was like, but yeah, like I don't know that people had you know,
Oh no, God no.
another 25 minutes of craziness. Uh,
It reminded me so much of UFC 300 where people had the Holloway Gaethje fight, which was crazy, and then that next fight, Pierre knocked out. I remember. I think it was Hill, but it was like that really like crazy fight followed by that really like short knockout fight where it just
right,
felt perfect. It felt
right,
like nothing better than this.
right, right, exactly. And it's yeah, it feels like, I mean, as crazy as those fights are, when they're 5 round fights, it's like, everybody, you want to stand up and clap for both guys, and it's like, but you don't have that like emotional release where it's just like holy shit, like
Yeah.
it's so having the night end, like you said, on that moment for Jan, right, where he picks up that big knockout win, and it's just like, it's just, kind of an adrenaline dump at that point, right? Like it's
Yeah.
all right. That was an awesome night of fights. So yeah, that was really cool. That was a really good night of fights. I mean, it's going to be hard to top that one.
Yeah.
It's because so many times, like there are fights that are crazy, right? Like we have crazy fights on just about every show. Like there'll be some crazy war that happens on this one, but it's rare to have a fight be that crazy with the skill also being that crazy.
Yeah.
Like if it's a couple first time amateurs, like, and that was the crazy fight that we had a million years ago that I talk about as one of the best fights I've ever seen. Um, it was Chris Madden and Buster Crandall. And of course, a guy named Buster would be the one that would be in a crazy fight like that. But
Great fight, man.
yeah, and but those guys, they had like, one or two fights apiece, right? And there was, so this was like their first or second fight ever. And um, no disrespect to him, but they like if you're looking at someone like Lazoya who's had a whole bunch of it. I mean, he fought Sean O'Malley in the amateurs, right? And
Yeah.
you see all the guys that Lazoya fought. I mean, he's got a lot more experience and a lot more training, right? So it was crazy to see just such high level stuff. I mean, even in the amateur title fights, these are guys that had, you know, three, four, five fights, and um, the skill level there. It was a really high level amateur fight. And oddly enough, all three guys that won in those amateur title fights are fighting on this show.
And they're making their pro debuts, or are they defending the amateur belts?
So they're all fighting as professionals. So two of them are making debuts, and one of them it's actually his second fight. So Nick Eldridge actually picked up a win up in Maine a few weeks ago, and
Nice.
he got in and out pretty quick, uninjured, and they said, hey, if you got room for him, we'd like to get Nick out there again. Um, and I think that's a pretty cool, kind of a pretty cool storyline, right? And it's a cool progression, and we see like so often we focus on the pros, right? Like that's what we're known for as compared to some of the other shows in the area that, that have a much bigger stable of amateur fighters. We haven't had, I mean, I think this will be the first time ever that someone fought for us as an amateur and also fought for us as a pro. Um,
That's
and
got to feel good. That's gonna feel great. It's almost like you're like a minor league team, almost. It's like you're
yeah,
helping build up your own talent.
yeah, and I mean, we've only been kind of back in business for, a handful of years now. And but so many of the amateur guys that we've seen, I'm sure if I went back and looked, I mean, I'm sure there's some of them that have fought pro somewhere else, but a lot of the guys like, Kyle Hill, like fought for us as a pro, but he hasn't fought, he never fought for us in the amateurs, right? Like
Yeah,
a lot of that was, a lot of these guys are getting their amateur experience on other shows and making pro debuts with us or second, third pro fight with us. Um, Jared St. Jean, his first amateur fight ever was with us. And I think I'd have to go back and count. I want to say he had 7 amateur fights and 6 of them were with us.
wow.
So he's now making a pro debut and he's kind of the first, he's definitely the first one that we've ever had that did an amateur debut with us that also is fighting for us as a pro. Um, so yeah, but also, Fred Allen Safier, he won the
Yeah, you look good.
145-pound title. He's making a pro debut. And again, Eldridge, he won the 135-pound title. It's his second fight. We also had Blaze Nichols on there too. Blaze was came in second place on that fight. And that was the crazy one where the referee took 2 points.
Yes, yeah.
So, if not for the point deductions, Blaze would have won the decision based on the scorecards. So, he's actually got another amateur fight. This will probably be, if I had to guess, this would be the last time we see him fight in the amateurs. Um, but we'll see. It's possible that he looks to get, one more in the amateurs after this, but I would assume by the time our June show rolls around that Blaze will probably want to be on that as a pro, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun night. A
Yeah.
lot of interesting stuff.
Now for championship fights, is it you guys have two championship fights this card?
Yeah.
So you got Carlos. Now, Carlos Lozoya, he was also the featherweight champion. Is this going to be a featherweight bout for him or a
It's just
bantamweight?
gonna be at bantamweight at 135.
Bantam.
Yeah,
Oh,
Carlos has our belt at 125, and he's more of a 125er. And the guy that he's fighting in this fight is also a 125er, but based on when we made the fight, the two of them would have been killing each other to get to 125.
yeah. Why
And
both, right?
if they could even make it, right? Because with with some of these guys, like I would say you know, they're they're a notch above a lot of the pros we see in the area, right? Like I think both of these guys are right on the cusp of the UFC and frankly could be there right now. Like they're
Yeah.
both their skill levels that high. So his opponent, Victor Diaz, he fought on Dana White Contender Series. He also headlined an LFA recently. He was a Titan FC champion, which was a big showdown in Florida. Um, I mean, they're some of the best 125-pound fighters in the country. And guys like that, they need more than, 4 weeks typically. In a lot of cases, they need more time than that to be in camp if they're going to make 125 because they're bigger guys for that weight. And so we decided to, was like, all right, we could do a catch weight of 130, but then, all of a sudden we've got, a great fight like this that we're only going to do 3 rounds. And they're both guys that have gone 5 rounds in the past. So it's, um, let's make it a 5 rounder. Carlos won the interim bantamweight title last time, so let's do it at 135 for the bantamweight title, right? I wouldn't expect to
Yeah.
see, yeah, I probably wouldn't expect to see either guy defend that. I think whichever guy wins that is, probably not going to see again. It's and that's kind of the funny thing in this business, right? Is um, if Carlos goes out and wins, right? Like we're seeing him kind of develop into a star and someone that people really want to see on the local scene. But if he goes out and wins this fight in convincing fashion, then he's
He's
probably
getting picked up.
probably going to get picked up, right? He's probably going to go to the UFC, which would be phenomenal. Like that's ultimately what we're here for. That's why we're on UFC Fight Pass. That's why the
Yeah.
UFC pays us, right? Is because they want us putting on these types of fights and ultimately, being a feeder system for the UFC. Um, but for the people that follow Combat FC, like the people that follow us locally, it's we hope that they're excited about that too, and they're not just like bummed out that they like watching all of a sudden aren't going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
then you see those guys on Contender Series or on a in the prelims on a car or something. You're like, oh, I saw that dude have
yeah,
a
I remember that
crazy
dude.
fight in person. It it,
Yeah,
it almost makes, I think, a stronger, like, I don't, bond might not be the right word, but like it makes me follow you guys more, knowing that this dude who's a pro now came from your organization. It's like it makes me want to follow him, and it makes me want to go to your shows because I know that that level of talent is, you're not just watching two, barroom brawlers go at it. You're watching guys with UFC level skills.
yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah. Thank you. And I think it's a cool moment if you're like I don't know how many people are like going to bars and watching the UFC anymore. I mean, I'm sure there's a group of people that are doing it, but we're a little bit older, right? Like
Yeah.
we were probably doing that, 15, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
Where people having like UFC parties. Like I don't want anyone hanging out at my house that late at night,
I know. I'm usually trying not to wake up my kid, and I'm like,
Right.
got the volume on low, watching it.
Right. But like, I remember times when, I'd be watching UFC fights years ago and it's like, oh, I know this guy, like I've seen this guy fight locally. Like, and I'm telling the other guys that I'm watching it with, like, wait till you see this kid. This kid's gonna be great. And, there are seasons of The Ultimate Fighter that I've tuned in for because it was some local guys and I wanted to see them. And
Yeah.
there are other seasons that I chose not to watch at all, because I didn't have an emotional connection with anybody. I didn't know anyone on the show, and it's you get busy with life and work and being a dad and but yeah, anytime there's a local guy on the show, it makes me want to watch, makes me watch the, wherever they're fighting on the UFC card. Like that's what'll have me
Yeah.
on my ESPN Plus app, watching the fights while I'm, you know, hanging out and so anyway, yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Did you watch the fight night this weekend when you were up in on vacation?
I wasn't able to this weekend.
You
Um,
great card. Great
yeah,
card.
I mean, I yeah, it's I wasn't able to because my kids had us running a little ragged. So yeah, I passed
Yeah.
by like I mean, I was reading about the fights, while we were out at dinner and things like that, and then we got home, and by the time we got them in the shower, I mean, I think I like while putting my 6-year-old to bed, I passed out. So it was like
Yeah.
woke up in jeans at like 1 a.m. and I pulled my phone out and I'm like, did Rob win? I'm trying to see
Yeah.
if Flaunt won his fight and um but yeah, I didn't have a chance to watch any of it, unfortunately.
It's one of the, I like, everything moves so quickly, and sometimes it's like hard to go back and watch stuff. But it's a good card to like go back and watch, just because all the prelim fights were all pretty short. They
Yeah.
were just a ton of knockouts. So if you fast forward, like, you can watch the whole card in like a half the regular time of a card.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's tough with social media because like so much of it, but
You see what happened, and you're like,
yeah,
oh, all right.
you can zip through the whole, like just scrolling through my feed at 1 o'clock in the morning, you can, like that was the
Yeah.
first thing that happened as I opened my phone. The first post that I saw on Instagram was one talking about how Rob Font won his fight. So I was like,
Oh,
oh,
he had a great fight. Rob Font's
yeah,
fight was, I mean, he always has really good fights, but it the first round I felt like could have went either way. Rob did, I thought, way more damage. He looked sharp, but
mhm.
then the dude he was fighting, I forget his name. I think he's Japanese or something like that. He had a couple of pretty nice takedowns with like 30 seconds to go in the round.
Yeah,
So you never know how that, it doesn't look as good, but Rob definitely did more damage. And the third round was insane. It
yeah.
was just a crazy third round. Just those dudes were banging it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm super pumped for this fight card for you guys as well. Now, do you always are really good, and this is I like always I got my pen and paper because I like to write them down so I don't forget. What do you got for us for this card? You always got a couple of sleepers that you make sure we don't miss.
All right. So I mean, again, like the whole card top to bottom is good, and I know everybody's going to say that, but um, I'll run you through it real quick. Um, so obviously, main event, Lazoya and Diaz. That's going to be an awesome fight. Um, Co-main, that's defending champ Damian Nelson versus Travis Demko. Um, Travis has looked awesome in Combat FC. Um, 3 fights, 3 first round finishes. He's looked great. Um, Damien's looked unbeatable. Like I don't know that Damien's dropped around. Like he looked awesome against Don Shanis, awesome against Jerry Muse. And both of these guys are primarily strikers. Um, and to get even a little more specific, primarily boxers. I mean, they both, they'll throw some knees in there, they'll throw some elbows, but for the most part, they're doing their damage with their punches.
Yeah,
Um, Damien's a little bigger than Travis, but like when Travis hits guys, like he's putting guys away. Every time he touches somebody, he's putting them away. So he's got some pro boxing experience as well. So I mean, I have no idea who wins the fight.
yeah,
If there was a betting line on it, Damien's the favorite, but Travis has done so good at finishing guys, and Damien fights a little more like I don't want to call him cautious because he's not cautious, but Travis kind of fights like a wild man. Like as soon as Travis gets you hurt, he's just jumping on you and he's doing everything. Like he's just trying to put it on guys and get them out of there. Whereas Damien's a little bit more measured, a little bit more technical. So I mean, I think it's going to make for a really interesting style matchup. And anytime you can put 2 guys in there who are high level strikers, I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but like, how can you go wrong?
yeah.
Like we'll see who's better at playing punch face, right? So that's going to be a good one. Um, Jake Pill is fighting Sean Johnson. That should be
I
a lot.
saw that too. That was a recent edition, right?
Yeah, we just added that probably. I mean, they both fought 2 weeks ago, so we added it after that. They had kind of it seemed like they were going to make that fight happen, but then they both ended up accepting different fights and
Yeah,
said, hey, if we come out of this uninjured, we can look to do it. Um, that'll be a fun one because, Jake tends to just explode on guys, right? Like he goes out there and he sprints until he gets guys out of there. Um, Whereas Sean is a guy that is pretty good defensively, you know, even in fights that he loses, he doesn't take a lot of damage. Like he's really good defensively, and he's just like he's a tough guy to fight. Like he's a tough guy to run over. So,
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see because Jake's gonna have push the pace and try to run him over, and Sean's a durable guy who doesn't usually get run over. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Um, and then we also have Everett Desalegn. That kid's really, really good. He's fought on some other shows. This will be the first time he's fighting for us. Um, very, very high level judo guy. Like competed at Worlds, Team USA judo. Like kid's fucking phenomenal. And his striking is just it's like a really violent striking style. And he's fighting a really durable guy with, who's got something like 20-25 pro fights. So it'll be a good test for Everett. Like we've seen Everett kind of he's basically either blown guys away or, then he jumped in and fought John Piersma, who, John ended up getting a fight in the UFC and or it was on one of the UFC shows. It was on like Road to the UFC or something like that. But either way, he got a shot in the UFC. So Piersma was the best, welterweight out here. He fought on one of our shows as well. Um, so it was like Everett was just smashing guys and then fought the best guy in the area. Um, so it was, and again, I'm saying best, like you get what I mean, one of the best guys in the area.
yeah.
Um, So it was, it was an interesting, like, it was a big jump, I guess is where I'm going with it. So we'll see, I'd say the guy that Everett's fighting is a tougher fight than the guys that he fought, with the exception of Piersma, right? So
Yeah.
it's a step up in competition there. We'll see how Johnny Dos Santos handles the pressure that Everett typically brings.
Judo's a scary one too. I feel like I don't know if my YouTube algorithm has just been gearing me more towards judo for some reason. I was watching a lot of like Ronda Rousey stuff the other day, but it's like once those guys get a hold of you, they're so dangerous. So
Yeah.
like it can, you know what I mean? Not that I've ever had to like be in that situation, but I can imagine it playing with your head, knowing it's a little bit different style grappling where if somebody gets close, they're gonna like maybe throw you through through the ring, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's interesting if you've never dealt with it before. It's hard to deal with if you're not familiar with judo. I mean, it's similar to jujitsu. If you're not someone who trains jujitsu, you'll get caught in something stupid. Like
Yeah.
you'll get caught in something, you know, um, but with judo, when you get caught in something, like when you leave something open that you shouldn't, they throw you on your head. So
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, they choked me, and like that's the tough part about judo is like you fuck around and don't know what they're doing, and next thing you know, it's like you're looking up at the ceiling and you're
Yeah.
flying through the air. Um, so another fight I'm really excited about, um, Lucas Rosa versus Aaron Hughes. I think that fight's gonna be really good. I Lucas has taken a slower approach than some, because so many guys are looking at it like, I want to get to the UFC in 5 fights, and that they'll take one or two fights where they're an obvious favorite, and then they'll take a tougher fight. Then they'll take, once they get to 4-0, they're like, all right, I want to be fighting for a belt, or 5-0, they're fighting for a belt, and they're looking to fight the toughest guy in the area. Um, which works for some guys, and we see some guys get onto, it's rare, but we see some guys get into the UFC or get on Contender Series at 6-0 or something like that. But I've never loved that approach because we've seen a lot of prospects make that jump too fast, run into a veteran, and then they lose a fight, and then but it's like I look at it like you should be gaining experience on the local level, not just like, hey, get me to 5 or 6 wins and then let me fight the best in the world and see where the cards fall. Like, let me improve my skills. Every time I'm fighting, I'm gaining more and more experience. And then when I finally do get to the UFC, I'll be, more battle tested, right? So I think someone like Lucas has taken a slower approach, right? So he's 5-0 now, and he's not asking me for a title fight. He's still looking to build and take tougher and tougher and tougher guys from here on out. And Hughes, he's kind of taken the opposite approach, I would say. Like, he's fought some tougher guys. Like, if you look at the guys that they fought, Hughes has definitely fought the tougher guys. Um, but also when you make those jumps and you fight tougher guys, then you end up with some losses, right? So it'll be an interesting fight because Hughes has been in there with some really tough guys. There's not a lot that Rose is going to show him that he hasn't seen before, and that's not to say that I'm not making a prediction on the fight, right? I'm not saying that I think either guy has a major leg up, but I think we see like an up and coming prospect fighting a guy who's fought a bunch of dangerous fights. So, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Rose is the undefeated prospect at 5-0. So I think if there was a betting line on this one, Rosa would be, and sorry for all, I don't know if you can hear the dog in the background, but sorry about that.
Oh
But
yeah.
but yeah, I mean Rosa would be a betting favorite here, right? And um, but it's there's a lot more to it than that. I think as we see, like I would say that Hughes is the toughest guy that Rosa fought so far. Like this will be Rosa's toughest fight as a pro. Um, so it'll be really interesting. And I know that I mean Hughes works harder than anybody. He's just like he's a guy that is just he's committed. He's a guy that wants it as bad as anybody else on the show. Um,
That's a dangerous guy.
yeah, I mean, if you look at his social media, like it's just, it's always like he's always posting about, what he did today. He's always posting about the rounds he did. He's always like he's excited for this fight. He's excited to go out there and perform. And you can just tell that it means a lot to the guy. And like you said, those are dangerous guys. I think everybody would be upset if they lost, but you can tell that this fight is really meaningful for Hughes, and I think it's gonna be a really good fight. I can't wait. And I know I said I was gonna do it quickly, and I haven't done it quickly for you, but um,
And
Jared,
that's a featherweight fight.
yeah, yep,
Featherweight.
yeah, Jared St. Jean. I'm gonna butcher Stefanos' name. Stefanos Argiru. No
Sounds
idea
good
how
to
to
me.
say no idea how to say his name. I've only heard it. I've only heard Stefanos, right? So, we've seen what St. Jean can do, right? Like he's good on the ground. Um, but I mean, he's primarily knocking guys out. Like he likes to go out there and bang with guys. Stefanos is a really high level kickboxer. Um, his ground game's not great. Like that's not to say it's bad. He trains MMA, but he's not like he's not a purple belt in jiu-jitsu or anything, right? Like, but like that kid can crack. And he's been training and fighting for a long time. He's only had a couple pro fights, but he's had a bunch of kickboxing fights, a bunch of amateur fights. Um, that's gonna be a very high level fight. And it's a tough fight for St. Jean. It's a very tough fight for a pro debut. Um, so that ultimately is gonna be one of the fights we have on Fight Pass based on, you know, I think it's gonna be a phenomenal fight.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't wait for that one. Um, and yeah,
Now, is it going to be a five fight on a five? I can't talk. Five fights on Fight Pass. A five fight main card.
yep, there's going to be 6 fights on Fight Pass.
Six fights. Okay.
There's going to be 6 fights on Fight Pass, and I think the 6 I just talked to are going to be those 6 fights. Lazoya Diaz, Demko Nelson, Rosa Hughes, Pilla Sean Johnson, um, Desalegn and Dos Santos, as well as St. Jean and Stefanos. And then as far as, we do have, again, those the other former amateur champions in pro fights, Fred Allen Safir, as well as Nick Eldridge, um, pro debut as well as second pro fight. And then some of the amateur fights we have, there's one that I'm really excited about. And I'm going to end up having it a little bit, they're 2 first time guys, but I've got them a little bit later in the night than I normally would have 2 first time guys. So it's Dan Ninev or Nineveh. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name. He's fighting Nathaniel Oliveira, and they're both young kids. Like I think they're 18 and 19. And this is one of those fights where like it sucks that somebody's got to lose.
Yeah.
Because neither of these guys, like if they continue to fight, which I think they both will, they're going to end up with winning amateur records for sure.
Yeah. Two studs.
Yeah, and so Dan, he's got some amateur boxing fights. Trains with Mike Sakeli, tough kid, right? He looks the part, tough kid. Oliveira is a 2 time national karate champion, and he looks fast. I've seen some of his videos that he's posted, and like some of the full contact karate stuff that they've done, like some of the sparring, and um, I mean, he looks real fast. He looks like a really good striker. So we'll have to see how the rest of his game is, right? We'll have to see how the rest of his game compares. But um, I mean, this is a guy that he's competed all over the world.
Yeah.
Like he's competed in, multiple world championships in other countries. And so I don't think the stage is going to be scary for him. And so we've got 2 guys that are, young, very athletic, both really good strikers. That's going to be a really fun fight. Um,
Seems like in those, it's like who's going to be comfortable first, right? Like boxing experience, karate experience, who's going to settle in and try to impose their game plan.
Well, and the crazy thing about MMA is like the gloves are small, right?
Yeah.
Like all it takes is one mistake, right? Like that's all it takes. Like there's not a lot of do-overs. Like if you're, if you get caught with one counter and you get dropped in the amateurs, they don't give you as much time to fight through it, right? So if either of these guys gets hit clean and dropped, the other guy jumps on him immediately and, as they're even throwing a couple like the guy might still be all right, but they're just like, no, we're not, we're not trying to send out amateur guys on stretchers, right? So
Yeah.
stop them
Yeah. Yeah.
earlier in the amateurs. So it's, you don't get to really, reset and then, you know, go out there and try again, right? It's like these, whichever guy lands first. If you land something big, typically it's it. So yeah, we'll see which guy gets comfortable first, which guy, lands a big shot first. But I mean, I don't know that that's a fight that. I mean, again, every time I say something, I jinx it, right? But I don't see that one going 3 rounds, right? I think
Yeah. You didn't jinx it last time.
yeah, I mean, someone's gonna get hit clean in that fight. Um, I mean, there's a lot of good fights, man. It's gonna be a really good night. It's gonna be a really good night. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait. The uh what the heck was I gonna say? For the last fight, let me hold on. I try to be smart and I try to make notes and then I never actually look at
I hear you.
it. Ugh. But it's I mean also it's like there's so many good things about like this fight. I don't know as many of the fighters on this card as I was able to do a little bit more research on the last one, but I mean we've got what I'm doing here.
So while you're going through your notes, right after that last show, you were doing a comedy competition that also had my childhood best friend in it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Justin.
So who won? Are you funnier than the best man in my wedding? That's a very important question here.
I did so that was the first round. I did
Okay.
I can't say that I won it, but I did advance. So it was like the top I think they picked two of us that night. Two or three or something like that. And then we advanced to the next round. And I didn't win the final in the last round, but I had a good set.
Yeah.
I had a good set. So I was able to work a couple of other like bookings out of it. Justin Kill, I see Justin posting all the time. He posting shows. So I think that show actually he had a good set too.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely like after that I saw him posting a lot more about some other shows. So it's sort of like that, like having a good fight. Like
Yeah.
the other one we're talking about, like the dude that didn't win. I'm butchering his name. The dude that fought Lazoya, Pin, whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
Pisciano, yeah.
yeah, like he didn't win, right? But everyone's talking about that fight. Everybody knows who that dude is now. So, all that stuff matters. Same thing, like, Justin didn't win that round, but he had a great set. And, hopefully got, some bookings from it.
Yeah, I saw him post something like he's always, he'll post and he's got like his next like 4 dates and
yeah,
posting something coming up and so it was, it's cool to see that and it's funny if he could just like he would be way funnier on a podcast than I think most dudes would be.
Oh yeah, I told him, I kind of stopped doing the podcast for a little bit because I was doing it out of Lawrence cable access TV,
Yeah.
and then at the end of December they sold the building, so they had to shut down the channel unfortunately, and then January and most of February I was just busy doing stuff, so just shows and whatnot. So I've been trying to set up a schedule to start to get some guest book and figure out where other times I've done it in my basement because I got some posters up where I have some workout stuff, and then it's just kind of echoey. So today I'm in my little side room here. Hopefully the sound's a little bit better. But I told Justin last time I saw him, I was like, "Oh yeah, come on, come on the podcast." But doing podcasts too like this, one, it's awesome because I like talking about fights, and
Yeah.
having you guys on are awesome because there's nobody really more knowledgeable in the area than guys that run fights. Like you
Right.
guys have seen it all, but it really does help with stand-up comedy too. If I am able to do, a podcast a week, or if I'm able to just, talk through something with somebody for a week, like that actually really translates for me anyway on stage.
Yeah.
It just sort of helps me, like, my speed and my cadence and my rhythm a little bit. So I feel like this podcast, I'm probably sucking and not talking very well because I haven't done it in a month and a half. But it's definitely helpful for comedy, and it's I just like doing it. I just like talking.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Justin's good talking too.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when I say like if he was doing like a podcast, like he'd be even funnier. Like there's so many stupid stories that like he's the best guy to like have a beer with over a fire, man. Like he's so fucking funny and we have so many stupid ass stories. Like if like stuff that if he worked it into a set, you'd think was a lie.
Yeah.
Like,
Where did
like,
you guys grow up?
we grew up in Drake.
In Drake? Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, and like just one quick one. Like on the way to school one day, he farted on the bus and people threw up. Like
Oh.
if you work that in, like in like the junior high yearbook when it's like talking about best memories. This was right when like the movie Speed was out and the sign, bomb on bus, right? So he used to always joke about the bomb on the bus, right?
Yeah.
If you try to work that into a set and it's like, oh yeah, when I was 14, it was hysterical. I farted and everybody, like people were puking. Like people would think you were full of shit, right? But like there's 1,000 stories like that of just like random bullshit that
That's a
happened.
legendary story. It's like the dude that took a shit on the airplane and turned it around. Oh
Oh,
man. Yeah,
so
Justin's a good dude. I like Justin. I don't see him as much. It's one of those things, it's like every once you kind of get in a clump of shows with comics and you see them, I feel like, for a month or a month and a half every day or all the time. And then you kind of go off over here and then you don't see him again for
yeah,
a year or whatever. So I don't think I've seen Justin since the actual show itself, but yeah, he's a good dude.
yeah, yeah. So anyway,
It's
did you find your notes yet, or was trying to buy you some time?
dude, I don't know. I have my note. I think I wrote it on the back of a piece of mail. I was like, I shouldn't say this too well. My wife was super pissed at me today just because I like started cleaning stuff up, and then I had all my stuff that I was trying to get ready for taxes this year, like just sort of out on the desk and was like
Yeah.
try to organize it. This is like 2 weeks ago, and I just had shit like scattered everywhere. And finally, I had to get it together. I was writing shit down. I was like, oh, it's just a mess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not the most organized person ever, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Scatterbrained.
You're gonna be at you're gonna be at this show, right?
Yeah, so I was supposed to have a show that night, and then it was a last minute show I got, but then I think it kind of fell through. So if anything, I'm gonna probably, if I'm not there at the start of it, because I do like to just like watch all the fights, I'll probably be there by maybe like the second or third fight of the main card. It was an 8 o'clock start time for the
So
main
Fight Pass is at 9.
fight pass. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
If I do the show, I think the show starts at 8, and I'm assuming I'd be like one of the first to go up, like doing a guest spot. So
Yeah, yeah. So we've got some fights starting at 7. Prelims will start about 7, and then the
yeah.
main card starts at 9. So
Do you guys have any grappling matches on this show?
we do. We've got two.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
we've got two, and it's you know, it, I feel like I use the word fun and interesting way too often, but we were talking about judo earlier. So Rick Hahn's doing a grappling match, and if you're not too familiar with Rick, Rick was a judo Olympian. Um,
Cool.
and he's actually going to be doing it. They're doing it in a gi, He's
Oh,
grappling
cool.
black belt in jiu-jitsu. So this will be one, I'm sure when Rick says, "Can we do it in a gi?" He's like, he wants to, he's trying to throw this fucking guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's going out there and the other guy's probably going to pull guard because, why do you want to get thrown by the Olympian? Um, but that'll be a fun one. Because we don't do a ton of grappling. Like we've been doing some lately, but it's always like it's got to be a meaningful grappling match, and it's got to be someone that's tied to MMA in some way, like someone that runs an MMA gym or someone that used to fight for us, like when we had one with Nate Lamott and Mike Zakelli. Those are both guys that fought for us years ago.
Yeah.
They're guys that run gyms now, and their fighters often compete for us. So those are the types of grappling matches we try to set up. I mean, people message me all the time asking, hey, can I get a grappling match on your show? And it's it's I would if it's someone that's kind of an up and coming grappler that's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, like it's probably not going to be the right fit for us, right? Because we're only doing one or two per show max, and it's usually like instructors of gyms or guys that fought for us. So the other grappling match is Mike Zakelli's doing another one with us, and he's going to be grappling Chris Almeida. Chris runs um it's it's like energy. I can't remember if it's energy MMA and fitness or energy fitness. It's something like that. But it's he was a guy that trained at was a coach at the Brazilian Martial Arts Center for many years, and now he opened up energy. So there's been some guys from that gym who have fought for us. Um, and Chris is phenomenal grappler, black belt in jiu-jitsu. Both him and Mike are black belts, so they're going to be doing no gi. Um,
Oh, cool.
and yeah, that'll be a fun one as well. Still not 100% sure where the grappling's going to go on that night. In the past, we've typically had to do them first. But I don't know. I'm still trying to figure a lot of that out. Like we got to get through the next, um, probably next day and a half before I finalize all that because
Yeah.
depending on
Stuff.
what happens with, we've got the prelims streaming as well, and they the companies that we're streaming with, we have to talk to them about kind of what our plans are for the night. And
Is it going to be? Is it on Swerve for the prelims again?
yep, yeah, it's on Swerve, and it's also we're working with this other company as well that's looking to get it on a bunch of other channels, but I'm not 100% sure what other channels it's going to be on yet. um but it's a company that I'm going to screw up the how I describe this, but basically you'd send them the feed, and then they would share it live with a whole bunch of other channels and
Ah, cool.
but they have to, like they have the contracts with these other channels. And so yeah, we're trying to get our stuff out there as much as possible, and that's something that we're putting a kind of a bigger focus on this time. Meaning just the exposure and the social media piece, and like there's so many things that we want to do. But for the most part, it's me and Joe doing most of the work between the fights. Like
Yeah.
on fight night and or on fight week, we have a bunch of people that'll come in and work on some things. But once the show ends, there's not a lot of people that kind of help with the planning for the next one, and that are kind of helping us try to figure out how to grow the company. There are people
Yeah.
who just kind of come in and work on fight night and work on weigh-in day, and they complete their tasks, and then it goes back to just me and Joe trying to figure out how do we grow this thing. Um, so there's a million things that we want to do, but figuring out which ones kind of make the to-do list is always the challenge. So finally on this one, we're putting a much bigger focus on social media. So
Yeah.
we did bring someone in. I don't know if you saw the video on our social media from Carissa Maxwell.
I think I did. Yeah, yeah. And I think I saw too. You guys had some really cool new like fight posters and stuff too that like really popped as well. I like those.
Yeah, yeah, and Carissa she used to work for the PFL. And she's going to be doing a lot of social media posts from the event.
Oh,
She's
cool.
covering the weigh-ins, and she's going to be doing kind of some unique stuff, right? Because all we've been really showing on our social media forever is just like fight posters, fight highlights. It's just very like like not necessarily fun. Like we haven't shown a lot of personality. Like we did some stuff with the rewind show that we did. We had a show with
Yeah.
Nesson where we kind of exposed some of our fighters to that audience a little bit. Um, but we haven't done a lot on fight week that's like I don't know if you watched if you watch the UFC broadcasts or if you watch the UFC social media, but um they have someone named Nina that does a lot of really
Oh, constantly. Yeah.
yeah, like exactly as soon as you say
Yeah.
it, like she's got I couldn't even begin to tell you which thing she said, like which question she was asking people on this show that was entertaining, but when it comes across your feed you watch it because you see it
Yeah.
side of the fighters. You see them answering it's not just the same like what do you know about your opponent, how did training camp go, like and that's really what our focus has been, right? Like our focus on our social media for 8 shows, it's been fight announcements, it's been highlights, of it's to hype up this next event, or it's to show you the current event, like in there isn't a lot of personality that's gone into it, and we're really trying to change that. So we've got Carissa coming in to do some fun content with the fighters and to kind of expose our audience to our fighters in a different way. We're changing the way that we do some of the stuff we do on weigh-in day as well. So it's not just Carissa. We have some other folks that are going to be helping out as
That's
well.
cool.
So yeah, we're trying to do a little bit of everything to kind of increase.
Pizzazz it up a little bit, right?
Yeah,
That's the hardest part. I'm so envious of those people that know how to work social media like that. I'm such like a donkey. You know what I mean? Like I wish I had a better like feel for it. Some people just know how like I could spend 10 hours in a room trying to make this awesome video. Some people 2 seconds, they just know how to make it work.
yeah. Well, and the crazy thing, right, is like I've seen like I'm a pretty analytical guy. So I can take a look at what we're doing and I can take a look at certain things and I can say, okay, this was a waste of money. Or this wasn't a good idea. So like I'm pretty sure if I put my focus into growing our social media, if that was one of my top focuses, I could do a good job of it.
Yeah.
But we have so much other stuff where like we got to match the fight card, we got to do the content so that we like there's so many things. So it's like, all right, I can't focus on that. But like I'll see things, right, where I'll say, all right, we've hired some other people to do some content for us. And they're making really nice, really high quality videos, right? They're making like whether it's highlights, whether like whatever you want to call it. They come up with just like the camera shots are just beautiful.
Yeah.
They've given us some really, really good, just some high quality content, right? But we posted to our feed. Like social media is such a like so we were getting content that was like if we were trying to produce a commercial that we were going to go use to sell our brand to sponsors. Phenomenal video, right? Like beautiful content. We throw that up on our social media and people, they hit it while they're scrolling, they watch it and then they might like it, they might comment and then they move on and they never think about it again, right? So it's tough to pay for like really high-end content like that because it doesn't help, you know.
It's the blink of an eye.
Right, right,
It's gone.
exactly. So we like on the same day that, this company that we hired posted a really high-end video, we also posted a video from like a shitty angle from an iPhone, 3 rows back through the cage of a guy getting knocked out. And the knockout had more engagement, right?
Yeah.
Like so, so it's like there's so like a lot of the organic content does a lot better, right? And a lot of just getting shit up fast works really, really well, instead of like, so if we're trying to put something together, like
Yeah.
like that Jan Oliveira knockout, like from the last fight, if you post that immediately, like doesn't even have to be the perfect footage. It doesn't have to have the commentary. It can be from our guy cage side shooting it on his iPhone, upload that to our feed immediately, tag Jan in it, tag UFC Fight Pass, like something like that. We see more engagement on something like that that's happening live than we would, if we sat down and got the footage from the production team, put together the most beautiful highlight that you've ever seen, but you post that 5 hours later or the next day, and like it just doesn't have the same impact. So those are things, we're seeing what hasn't worked. We're trying to figure out um the way to kind of give the content that our fans want to see. And
Yeah.
um I think this one's going to be a lot better. I think we're going to, with the people that we've got working on this one, and with kind of the philosophy of getting things up, whatever we can get up fast, get it up, instead of trying to make the perfect content a day or two later.
Yeah.
But
And then, the people that follow you that were there live that saw it, then maybe they see that and they're like, oh, here's my version of it. Or, you know what I mean? And you're right. I think the faster it gets up, it's got to create more buzz. It's got to create like a little bit more engagement.
well, and we can see our engagement just build throughout fight week. Like even if I'm posting the same content, we see our engagement build and then we see it peak, right? Like it's our like we get tons of social media followers between weigh-in day, and then typically, like it'll peak, either at the event or, shortly the day after. But then we start to see it decline, and by Tuesday, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
Right. So like if I put out the best highlight we've ever put out, and our, our prior production guy gave us some really good highlights, right? But if we get some of that stuff a week later and we post it, it's kind of like nobody cares.
Into the ether.
We'll still do some numbers, but whatever content we can get out there, to kind of keep the engagement high and to keep people, clicking on our stuff, sharing our stuff, whatever we can get out there on, fight night or early the next day, like, and through the weekend, that's way more impactful
That's your time. Yeah.
than perfect content a week later. And we still have to do it. We like you still have to keep your page, active, but you still have to make sure that you're posting highlights, and we'll continue to post things after the fight before we start announcing the next one. But like, but you can definitely see the content's way more impactful, you know, like that, the few days leading into the fight, the few days after, and um, like we'll still have engagement, but nowhere near what it is right around fight night.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's
When are you guys going to start doing the post fight press conference?
We've tried that. Like we tried to do something like that, and it's just tough to do. First in our building, it's tough to do, right?
Yeah.
That's a big thing, like because there's not really a quiet spot that makes sense for a press conference. Like we could probably set something up, but like we don't get a lot of press, like we don't, that's one thing that we haven't done a great job of as a company is for lack of a better term, kiss the ass of the local guys that do the podcasts, or that run the social media pages. And there's not a lot of them that are big. There's not a lot of them that have these big followings that cover local MMA, because there's just not, you know, there's not 50,000 people that want to read about, what's going on.
Yeah.
There was, but um so, again, if we have to try to figure out where are we going to prioritize, like where are we going to spend all our time, like I've tried to make time to, and anytime if someone invites me on a podcast, I will always say yes. If someone,
Yeah.
if I have to bug someone and ask them two or three times, hey, when am I going to do a podcast? Um, like I know you've been trying hard lately, and you got your page up to 450 followers. Like I can't chase guys like that and beg them to put me on, right? Like
Yeah.
we just don't have the time. We have too much shit going on. So we don't get a lot of press. We might have two or three guys that we talk to that that like us for one reason or another that come in. And so when we've tried to do post-fight press conferences, it was just really more about us sharing more content than it was something that the press was asking for.
Yeah.
There hasn't, we've actually, there have been people that we've tried to bring in and pay to do post-fight interviews,
Oh, really?
like off, yeah, like, and it's, just hasn't worked, like we did it for our first show. I think it was our first show. I'd have to go back and look. I believe it was the first one. And we got some decent interviews out of it, but um it was a pain to execute. We had to run guys upstairs, and the guy who was doing the interviews was missing all the fights. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's something that we may look to do in the future, but like that doesn't make the doesn't make the list right now based on all the other stuff.
Yeah. I even like this morning, every morning after, I usually don't watch it that night. I'll be like the morning after just to like have something to watch, like,
Yeah.
Dana White or like Hunter, one of those guys. Usually Dana's the one, doing it, but they get so many hits. I don't know if it's just because Dana himself is so popular in that respect, but those press conferences have some of like the biggest social media hits
Yeah.
out of all their content. I'm like, why am I so? I don't even know why I'm so interested in them because I just watched the fight, but there's something about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, it's always cool to, I mean, I like hearing about the business side of it, and I like hearing about, kind of what the company thought of the fight night, but I've always really enjoyed, Dana and Hunter because in many, they'll talk about what's next.
Yeah,
Oh, and that's something that's cool. It kind of puts a cap on the night, and that's something that um I've always enjoyed, and if there's some sort of controversy, like you're absolutely right. I wanted to see what Dana White said after the dude shoved Austin Vandeford after that
yeah,
fight, right? Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
what was Dana's reaction to that? And Austin's a guy that I've been a fan of for a little while now. I saw him fight in some other organizations, and I was curious to see what Dana thought of his performance. And like so that like yeah, like I'm always curious for that, and that gives me an idea. We should probably, I should probably Carissa's going to be doing a lot of post-fight interviews. Like she's going to be not so it won't be press conference style necessarily,
yeah,
but
yeah.
she's going to be grabbing people after their fight, and she's going to be doing some interviews. And we probably should do have some sort of conversation with her
Or
after
like a little breakdown or something like
that.
that.
Yeah, yeah, we should kind of film something with with me and Joe, and put that out there. And yeah, it'll be a good way to kind of cap the night and talk about what's next. And um, yeah, I mean, obviously we're not anywhere near as popular as Dana White and Hunter Campbell, but I think um, it's funny because there's a video that I always do, and I put it out on fight day, and it's just I just grab my phone and I just record a quick video.
Yeah, run through it.
It's like welcome to fight day, card, this is what the card looks like top to bottom. Doors are going to be at this time, first fight's at this time, you know, like I try to rattle off like, hey, if you're going to be there for one of these four fights, you know, first fight's going to be at 6:30, make sure you get there early. Like if it's a card that's just we've had some that are just packed,
Yeah.
and if it's one where the first fight's going to be at like whatever it is, I'm always announcing, hey, first fight is, these are the first three fights. If you're a fan of one of these three guys, make sure you're there early because they're going to be fighting between, you know, likely between 7 and 7:30. So if you show up at 8 o'clock, you're going to miss these guys, right? And I, it's usually I don't know, minute and a half, 2 minutes tops, where I just do a real quick high level. Sometimes I do it from the venue, sometimes I do it from my deck. It's not anything I put a ton of thought into. It's just shooting from the hip on this is what you can expect, get there at this time, you know, main card starts at this time, it's going to be streaming in these places. And that video always does a shitload.
Oh hell yeah.
And like it's not that interesting. Like, I'm not necessarily saying like, I'm not breaking news. I'm not, like it's not that I'm that interesting either, but I think people just like they like to get updated on shit. You,
Yeah,
I'm sure if I did a quick post that just kind of recapped like, full fight card announcement, right? Because we put out a lot of posters and some fights have fallen through. So just, if when we release our poster of all the fights, if we did a quick video on that, like, yeah, it probably does decent engagement, right? Because people can only see so much, so many highlights, and
yeah,
there's many, and that's just so much of what our social media is. So I think, like when you're talking about Dana and Hunter being interesting, like, yeah, it's like it's a different type of content, right? And you can only
yeah,
watch so many dudes get punched in the face, right? But then when that comes across your feed, it's, oh, I gotta see what this guy's saying, you know.
yeah. It also it like gives you like how we are talking about connection earlier. Like it gives you a little bit of a connection. Like it's not just. I mean, fighters are, that's what we're there to see. It's a huge part of it, but that's not there if you guys don't make this event. So having that insight to the event makes me more interested in that one and also the next one. It's like, it's sort of just as a consumer gives me a little bit of buy-in. I love shit like that. I love it.
Yeah, and I think, doing podcasts like this, I mean, anyone that listens, I think it helps give people a reason to care. Like I was talking about, the two amateur guys that are 18 and 19 years old, right? Like if people, other than the people that are buying tickets from them directly, most of the people in the building aren't going to know who they are.
Yeah.
Anybody who hears us on a podcast or hears, someone talk about it on social media, like all of a sudden it gives them a reason to care about that fight. So I think that's part of the reason that, I enjoy listening to Dana and Hunter is, when they're talking about what's coming next and, if they highlight a guy that, oh, so and so was, whatever it is, like, oh, he took this fight on 3 days' notice. He came in and did this. We expect big things from this guy. Now I'm going to remember that guy.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I don't know. I think anything that can help build a connection is great because there's so much MMA. There's so much fighting out there that, yeah, finding a way to connect with the audience is key, right? It's something we all
Yeah.
do a better job of, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I even think like, I mean, I love like street beefs and stuff like that too. Like, when you watch street beefs, yeah, they're crazy fights, but also, I forget the guy's name, but it's like whoever that promoter dude is, like, if you see him, you know who he is. Like that's a street beef guy. It makes you. When I see him posting a video, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna see what he's got to say. Maybe he's got
Yeah.
something popping up.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Listen, Rick, I don't know how much. I don't want to keep you for too long, but I like I was saying earlier, I really appreciate you coming on this podcast and chopping it up. And I'm also like on Zoom. I probably look like I'm at a weird angle. I have my other camera, with this microphone set up, so I'm
No, no, it's all
like
good.
like going back and forth. But I really appreciate you coming on. You and Joe always super generous with your time, man. And um, I love watching fights. I'm a big fight fan, and I can tell you, like, going to Combat FC fights are some of the best fights around I've ever been to. Just the environment, the matchups, unbelievable. So whoever is listening to this, you're in the area, you got to get to Combat FC. I'm going to definitely. Usually, I get the Zoom recording within like 30 minutes of ending it, and I'm going to start editing up so I can get some content up this week. But um, uh, Combat FC, Shriners Auditorium. Fights start at 7:30. You said or 7?
Maybe 7.
7 o'clock.
Yeah, it should be 7 o'clock. I think it'll be the first fight.
Oh hell yeah! And yeah, we got some big fights, and I can't wait, man. Pumped.
Me too. See you there.
Yeah, awesome. All right, everybody, check it out. Yeah, I don't have to plug my stuff. I'll plug that crap later. So cool. And